here, want to start and like set the table. But
Nice. It's a very small story that nobody really knows. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna stay in Los Alamos and become a scientist or something like that? And then in April of last year, I got nominated as a finalist with Chef Ali from Maza. I'm just trying to do my thing, man. I'm just working hard, trying to like create an awesome restaurant. But the competition obviously is getting heavier and heavier. I was just like, man, this is right up my alley. This is what I've been waiting for, essentially. But there's just so many, there's a ton of talent in this city, man. I think way more than I ever could have assumed. Cool neighborhood bars. There's dope ass restaurants. There's small chef owned restaurants that are killer. And
what is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Small Lake City podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson, and it's no secret that Salt Lake's food scene has seen major improvements over the last years. One place that I think has made a significant contribution to that change has been Urban Hill in the Post District. Now, this week's guest is executive chef of Urban Hill, Nick Zocco. Now, Nick was raised in New Mexico, but his career took him to Santa Fe and Las Vegas until eventually landing in Salt Lake, where he was approached to start Urban Hill Restaurant. I'm very grateful that we have him in the city. His perspective on food and the scene is amazing, and his story is really great as well. So definitely something we can all learn from Nick, but enjoy my conversation with him. Because yes, most people love talking about food and food people and the story behind it. And there's a lot of different anecdotes and examples I could give, but I mean, it comes back to experience, right? There's so many experiences that we can all understand and communicate in a similar way. And food is something we all have a relationship with.
Absolutely.
And so think about, it brings people together. It's, part of what keeps us survived. And so many people start to have opinions, especially as, food's become more of I don't want to say luxury item, but people just want good food, whether it's because they like good food or just want the status of saying they're at a nice place. But it's being a bigger dot on the map, and especially with Salt Lake. It's fun to see how all of a sudden you're hey, there are good restaurants.
Yeah, for real.
Also very timely right now because James Beard process is going on.
It is.
Which second year in a row you've been nominated.
Yep.
And been on the list.
Yeah.
Which is
amazing. Honestly, it's just kind of crazy. Last year when I got nominated, semi-finalist, that was a big thing for me, man. I was very humbled by that. And it was just something new that I've never experienced. Realistically, and then in April of last year, I got nominated as a finalist with Chef Ali from Maza. And, that was whoa. I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia that year. I had gone out with my brother and my dad to go see a Braves game. And, we were there for the opening day at the Braves game. And, my boss called me and I hadn't even seen yet, and I missed his call. I was sleeping or in the shower or something. And in my hotel room, and I called him back and I was like, did we get it? And he's like, we got it. And I was like, oh my God, man. And I just got really emotional.
Yeah.
It was big time. It was wow, this is something way bigger than I think I could ever have expected. Honestly, I'm just trying to do my thing, man. Yeah. I'm just working hard, trying to create an awesome restaurant and try to be very consistent and a place where people can go and enjoy and learn about new food and new ingredients and things like that. And just hang out with their friends and have a good time.
Totally.
And when I got that nomination, man, I was just wow, this is, it was surreal.
Totally. Especially when, I love that you experience in that way because it's one thing. The second best place I would say to get it is if you're in the kitchen with everybody, hey, we did it. Fuck yeah, let's go. Mm-hmm. But what a great place to be hey, we're on vacation with my family to go see our favorite baseball team play.
Yeah,
and you're getting ready, yeah, sorry. A couple beers last night. What happened? They're you did it. And being
yeah, it was crazy, man.
Right. Because it's gotta be hard if you're a chef because it's a very quick feedback cycle, right? So if someone's at the restaurant, they like something, don't like something, they can let you know pretty quickly. Sure. But at the end of the day, any random guest you don't know to be wow, it means a lot coming from you. Or you are this person.
Yeah.
It could just be Joe Schmo down the street on his date night with his wife, which is fine. Do your thing. But there's a whole nother level of validation and just a cherry on top of working so hard to being yes. And by the way, James Beard finalist. Congrats.
Right. And it's after that happened, man, people would walk by me in the restaurant. People would walk by me in the restaurant and tell me congratulations, because we have an open kitchen and, typically I'm out on the expo station and, just kind of running plates and making sure everything looks good and, getting that flow. And, man, people just walk by and just say, hey, chef, congratulations. We're so happy for you. And it's like, wow, I just like look at them and I'm like, God, thank you. And then it kind of clicks. You're like, dang, dude, like people actually appreciate the shit that I'm doing, So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's not just managing a bunch of line cooks and sous
Yeah.
chefs and servers. It's like it's actually making an impact and like making people.
It really
love
is,
things.
man.
Like even, so I was, let's see. I mean, I DM'd you about this, but I was at Urban Hill 3 weeks ago, and like, I mean, I love Urban Hill. I love when I can walk into a restaurant in Salt Lake and it doesn't feel like Salt Lake. Not saying that's a bad thing, but a typical Salt Lake restaurant has a very
Trust me,
typical
bro. I
feel
hear
to it.
that all the time.
Yes. But it's fun too because like I got the sea bass, which is not something I usually have a rule against landlocked states and seafood.
Okay.
But I mean, like it's just like so like it's so nice to be able to sit in a restaurant and be like, this is well done. Like I can, and then you can like articulate why.
Yeah.
And like the coconut rice with it, it's like I'm a sucker for any tropical flavored anything. And I just sat there and like there's this moment of gratitude, as cheesy as it sounds, be like, hey, there's people making good food and putting good restaurants here. Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Because even thinking about the history of like restaurants in Salt Lake, I mean, the first James Beard winner that I think it is, was, I mean, Viet Pham when he opened up his first restaurant in Salt Lake. And then now fast forward to the past 2 years where we have, I mean, Urban Hill, we have Ochre, we have Water Witch and Bar Gnome, we have Tupelo, we have, oh my gosh, the...
I mean, Feelings and Emulsions just got one. Manoli's.
So it's like fun to be like, yeah, you guys.
It's growing, man. It's growing. The community of James Beard nominees is growing big time. I think in our state and in our city, I think it's just putting us on the map more than ever. But the competition obviously is getting heavier and heavier. Totally. I mean, like surrounding states. We're part of a group of 5 states essentially for best chef mountain in my particular category. And so the competition's pretty heavy. I mean, there's a lot of chefs out there doing awesome stuff. And locally, man, like, dude, there's some dope chefs here. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's doing their thing. I think there's just always been like this idea that Salt Lake doesn't have good food. And, maybe, years ago, yeah, that was true, But, I mean, dude, over the past 5-10 years, I mean, this is one reason I moved here, man. Yeah. Realistically, is like one reason I moved here. I saw Salt Lake in this exponential growth period, and I was like, I got to be part of that. I want to be part of that, and so, I'm excited to be here, man.
Totally, and it's cool to hear that from like an outside person's perspective, because there's so many things when you're inside of the thing they're talking so great about, you're like, are we just sipping Kool-Aid? Is someone lying to me? But when I hear people, I know, thankfully I hear it a lot just because of like the life I live, but to hear people be like, oh, I have this hypothesis, this is growing, I'm a chef, their food is what it is, and there's room for improvements, like, I'm in, let's do this. But before we kind of jump into that and you're moving here, I want to start and like set the table but
nice.
With, I mean, how this all came to be. Because I know, I mean, New Mexico is home sweet home.
Yeah.
I mean, what role did food play growing up? I mean, walk me through the inspiration for it all.
Well, it's funny. I was actually born here in Utah.
Oh, I didn't know. Interesting.
Yeah. It's a very small story that nobody really knows. I was born here in Utah. My mom grew up in Kaysville, and then my dad, kind of a military brat, moving all over the country, and he found himself here in Utah, with my grandparents up in at the Air Force Base in Layton there, and ended up meeting my mom, and they had me, got married, whatever, and then my dad graduated from the U and went back down to New Mexico. He got a job there at Los Alamos, nuclear laboratory. Everybody knows it as the place the bomb was built, and so I grew up in a very science town. I was very fortunate to grow up with good education, and but the laboratory and the science part of it just didn't fit where I wanted to be at. It was not something that really attracted me. But growing up in New Mexico, I think the food culture there is it's an element of its own. I mean, it's very culturally intense with like Spanish and Mexican heritages.
A lot of green chilies.
Yep, I mean green chili, red chili, man. That's the ketchup of New Mexico. You got to have. I always go for the Christmas
style. Yep.
I mean, I got chilies tattooed on my arm, bro.
Such a fun place to be, and I also like love that you're like, hey, nuclear dad.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you have this, like, I mean, scientific facility, which is ironic because, like, I mean, you could say the same thing about a kitchen, and so it's like,
it's true.
Not this one, but this one eventually, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, at that time, I mean, if you're not necessarily being gravitated towards that, I mean, were you already pulled into like that kitchen and kind of creativity, or what was your
it's funny because growing up in that town, everything was, yeah, I guess you sort of had to have an expectation, like, am I going to be successful one day, right? And what am I going to do? Am I going to stay in Los Alamos and become a scientist or something like that? And just never gravitated with me, man. And I honestly, like, I would go home as a young child and I would watch, I'd watch all the normal shows that most kids watch, but then I would turn on PBS and I would watch Martin Yan with Yan Can Cook, Chinese chef. He always used a Chinese cleaver, and this guy could break down a chicken in like 10 seconds, like literally 10 seconds. And he was just really funny, and I just like sort of like got sucked into his show. And another one on PBS was Great Chefs. It was like basically like a camera that was just filming a chef make a dish, and it was typically a chef from like a Michelin star restaurant in Europe somewhere. And he would just go through the process, and there would be like a narrator. And I just was really drawn into that, and I was like, man, that's something that, I could see myself doing when I get older. It was weird. I don't know. It was just like this, it was really cool to just watch these people work, and I was just like, maybe this is something I'm going to do one day, but it's funny because I was incredibly picky as a child, man. Like I almost hated food, like I didn't like anything really, it was very, very like if my mom made meatloaf, I'm like, nah, I ain't eating that, like if it was peas on the plate, I'd push them aside, it was like, I'd be the one at the dinner table, like with the lights kind of off, and like, hey, you gotta finish your dinner, I'm like, oh, I don't want to finish this, like Yeah. And so it's super funny, I just grew up like so picky, man. And I don't know, I got into my teenage years and, something was like telling me, okay, what are you doing? Like it's almost time to graduate, you're getting up to your graduation period and, you got to figure something out, Law enforcement was a big one for me. I was very in tune. I mean, I grew up watching Cops, man. That was the show to watch. And I was like, man, I'm going to be a cop one day. The food thing kind of went away, and I was like, I'm going to be a cop. And then, homicide detective came up and, like, maybe narcotics officer. I was thinking about going to Weber State and doing my criminal justice degree there. And then all that kind of just went away. I basically, I grew up playing sports, played a lot of sports. So it's funny because a friend of mine, his mom actually worked as a nurse at our local hospital, and she worked with another nurse whose husband was a chef, and he was a chef in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And that the word kind of spread that like, hey, Nick's gonna probably go to culinary school or do something like that. I think he made that decision. So word got out, and she had talked to this nurse, and the nurse was like, well, maybe have him reach out to my husband. So I ended up reaching out to this chef down in Santa Fe, and I just called him one day and basically just got on the phone. I was like, hey, look, I'm going to graduate here, in the summertime. And I've never been in a professional kitchen, but cooking's kind of the direction I feel like I want to go. Can I come down to your restaurant and like just hang out in the kitchen and see what it's like, being in a professional kitchen, I'd never have any experience in a kitchen at all. I mean, I took like a couple of home ec classes in high school, and so he ended up saying, yeah, come down, man. It's all good, So I went down one day. I drove down and got there. Both the chefs were there, the executive sous chef and the executive chef. Gave me an apron and kind of just put me right on the line with one of the cooks. And, they kind of explained to me, what to do and kind of started, helping with some prep and things like that. And then service started and kind of just helped prep and plate some food and kind of watch these guys cook. And oh my God, man, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is dope.
This is not my sick. Normal kitchen.
Nah, man, I was like super excited about this. And so then, they call it a stage. The stage is kind of like where you do like an interview where you're getting interviewed essentially, but you're kind of like in the kitchen to see how the chef, reacts to your energy and, how are you engaging with the team, things like that.
Got it.
And so I told the chefs, I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job and I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll be a lifeguard in my local pool or something. Most high schoolers out of high school, it's like, yeah, find something that's local and chill.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to be a lifeguard. But then that happened and the chef was like, dude, just come work for us. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I have no experience. This is like one of the best restaurants in Santa Fe, It was called La Casa Sena. Had been there already like 20-something years, I think. So it was very established. It was a really upscale restaurant, one of the better fine dining restaurants in Santa Fe. And I was like, wow, all right. So I'll see you in June, And that's where it started, man. And dude, it just sucked me in, man. The first the first summer I worked there, I mean, I was just like hyped up the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like so much energy and yeah, it just kind of it sucked me in, dude. And here I am like 24 years later.
Well, it's like, and I love that because you have this hypothesis of what you want to do. Network says, hey, well, if you want to go try this out, I have a place. And then you go work with my husband, you have your stage, and just kind of feel it out. Because again, like you'd never spent time in a professional kitchen. You've never spent time in much of a kitchen except for home ec, your house, whatever it might be, to have it be like, yeah, I love like this energy, this everything. It almost reminds me of the scene in The Bear where his cousin goes to the other restaurant, like the English Laundry restaurant, to go be like, hey, I need you to actually like learn what the fuck you need to be doing. Yeah. And then he like gets it, and he comes back and he's wearing a suit every time. He's like, all right, like, yep, like every placement is perfect, like all the plating is perfect. And so I love you have that experience, because like there was a conversation I had last week. I was up at the Kangaroo University Club, I don't even know what it's called, and I was having lunch and the chef came out and I was like, oh, like great, like what did I have? I think it was just like a smash burger, so it wasn't like, I mean, burger's great, but nothing like to test someone's culinary skills, you know? And I was like, oh, like, how long have you been a chef for? He's like, oh, I've been cooking for 10, but chef for 6. And I was like,
Okay.
I was like, expound on that, you know? And he's like, well, like, he's like, I was at IHOP. I wasn't a chef, but then when I started taking things seriously and like wanting to learn, that's when I became a chef.
I mean, like, that's the thing, dude, is you can't call yourself a chef, right? I mean, you just can't immediately call yourself a chef.
Yeah.
You got to put your time in, you know, you got to create that title. You got to earn that title. I kind of feel like it's funny when younger cooks, like, you know, they put on their resume that I'm a chef, but you only see you've been cooking for 2 years, you know, and it's like, yo, I've been doing this for 24. Like, I can call myself a chef now, I think, you know.
There's enough people that have like, once you get the James Beard or two nominee, like if you haven't by then, it's like, listen, be nice to yourself. Whatever's going on upstairs isn't doing benefits for that. But
I mean, I didn't grow up cooking, man. Like I barely cooked as a kid, you know. My mom would cook dinner here and there. You know, I mean, I shouldn't say here or there. She always cooked dinner for us. You know, I was very fortunate that, you know, I had 2 younger brothers. We were into sports and, you know, go home to a good meal most of the time. But I didn't really cook, you know, growing up. I mean, I just always had that interest for some reason. And so, like, when I got into that kitchen, it just kind of clicked. You know, I felt like I was in something, you know, that I needed to be in. Yeah. You know, it kind of just gravitated toward me, and I grabbed it and I ran with it, you know, and it was a lot of fun, man. I always remember like my first like few months there, I'd go home and like my hands would smell like onions and garlic, and I was like, dude, that's awesome.
Like, best day ever.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, smell my fingers. You know, it's hilarious. But yeah, man, like, you know, I started after I did, you know, I worked in Santa Fe for about 7 years. And then, I decided to go to Las Vegas. You know, I felt like I had a buddy that moved out there, and him and I kind of, you know, grew up cooking, you know, in around that time period in Santa Fe. And we went to Santa Fe Community College together, where we went to a culinary program there. And I didn't go to a big school, man. I wasn't sure if it was for me. Yeah. You know, I mean, I didn't want culinary school nowadays, man, it's so expensive, you know, and like I see these, you know, these younger cooks, you know, students coming out of school, and I can't imagine the debt they're in, to be honest with you, you know. Totally. And then you're going into a restaurant and they're like, I ain't paying you shit, man.
Yeah. However much you thought you were making, let's be honest here. Yeah. So I love that you, I mean, have this great experience in Santa Fe. You go to culinary school, grind your teeth at this restaurant, and then you're like, all right, time for Vegas, which, I mean, obviously known for one of the best restaurant scenes in the country, if not world.
For sure.
I mean, what were some of your stops there? Some of your like mentors or people you learned during your time in Vegas?
Yeah. So the first year I moved there, it was very random. You know, I moved, I basically left Santa Fe. You know, I looked online for jobs, and I don't know, I just didn't really find anything, and it's very hard to get in on the Strip. Like, you kind of have to have an in, you know, I mean, you can't just like put a resume in and expect somebody to call you. I mean, these hotels like typically have thousands of resumes, right? And so, you know, you got to really stand out. So the first year I was there, you know, I went out to visit my buddy, and kind of, you know, just like start cruising around the city and handing out resumes. Well, he lived in this area that there was a brand new like restaurant opening. So I walked over there one day, and I just walked in. I felt good energy, and you know, one of the chefs came up to me and we started chatting. So you know, we went through the whole process, kind of interviewed, and I was like, dude, I'll see you in a month. You know, they were like, yeah, well, we'd love to have you. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I moved out. found a place to live, had great roommates. And so the first year was kind of rough, man. It was like trying to get in where you fit in, you know. I mean, this was a tapas bar. It's tapas style restaurant. It was a very big menu. But the people I worked with, like, we all became super close friends, you know, like it was just like, it was kind of meant to be, you know?
Cool.
And so I worked there, for like 6 months, because, you know, 6 months is nothing, but when you're working 6 days a week and you're working 16 or 17 hours a day, like it wears
Adds
you
up
down
quick. Yeah.
real
It's
quick.
a lot to do.
So I was like, this ain't working for me anymore. But I did meet my wife there, you know, which was great, you know, and we're still married today. But you know, that was definitely the highlight. So I ended up quitting that, and then trying to just find my way around the city, man. I ended up working for this really like not old school, but like super speakeasy Italian restaurant. It was kind of really gangster themed, you know. It was like kind of the Al Capone style restaurant. It was very dark, super speakeasy. It was a cool spot, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't something I could see myself doing
It
long
seems a
term.
little kitschy.
Yeah, man, there was some sketchy shit going on there, dude. You know, I don't need to get deep into it, but
I don't want you to end up in a gutter somewhere.
the restaurant industry, man, you'll see some stuff. You know, you definitely, like I said, I could write a book one day probably, but you know, anyways, about a year and a half go by, the housing recession hit, you know, and it was like Vegas kind of shut down, you know, and so it was hard to find like a good job. Anyways, moving past that, I ended up getting a job at Mesa Grill at Caesar's Palace, which is a Bobby Flay restaurant.
Cool.
And, you know, I went down, I did a stage one night, and then the chef called the next day, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to have you in. So it's kind of cool because I knew somebody that, you know, was like, hey, you know, I think there's a position open. So I kind of got it in, you know, it was great that I had that. And I worked for that restaurant for 6 years. 3 years I worked as a line cook, you know, just trying to get in. And an opportunity came up where one of the sous chefs quit, and I was next in line. You know, they offered me a position as a sous chef. So got in as sous chef at Mesa Grill, worked there for 3 years as a sous chef. And then went to the Wynn. So I went to Wynn Resorts. Cool. Worked at SW Steakhouse. So I got a job there. My mentor there, David Walzog, had really like put himself on the map as like one of the steakhouse chefs of the country, essentially. You know, he ran Michael Jordan Steakhouse and a bunch of other ones. But SW was kind of his baby, you know, and that's what he was known for. And I got a ton of experience there in the Japanese Wagyu programs and just understanding the Japanese Wagyu, you know, so high-end, you know, quality of meat. You know, I mean, dude, the people that would go in that restaurant would just drop insane dollars, man, you know, just on Wagyu, you know. So that was really cool. But I think Mesa was really fun because it was like an extension of Santa Fe. You know, it was like Bobby's Southwestern style food. Yeah. And I was like, man, I've cooked a lot of this food in Santa Fe. So it was very recognizable to me. You know, it was just his perspective on it. So it really felt right, you know. And but 6 years, man, it was a good long 6 years, and then 2 years, you know, 2.5-ish, I guess, in the Wynn. I mean, that was just a work for two very well known, established, you know, world renowned hotels. You know, was awesome. You know, it taught you a lot. I think about there's a sense of fine dining, but in volume, right? And how to do it in volume, because I mean that's what Vegas is about, man. 45 million people visit that city every year, which is absolutely insane.
Got to get people in. We got to get people out. I mean? We got to have good experiences.
Exactly. So you're always busy. You know. So it taught me a lot about that.
What were some? Because I mean, it's nice that you have this initial experience in Santa Fe where you have. I mean, it's a great restaurant, but it's not like a Vegas, like that sort of volume, that sort of iconic. It's not a Bobby Flay restaurant. And to go from there to this, to then to sous chef of that, I mean, what were some of those things you learned along the way that, I mean, impacted your career from those people that you were learning from?
Yeah, I think, you know, just, you know, learning how to manage people, you know, I think that was the biggest challenge, you know, is just learning how to, especially when, you know, you're dealing with a lot more people, you know, that you're working with, you know, I mean, in Santa Fe, it's a small town, man. It's a small city. You know, there's not a ton of people there. Typically, the kitchens are, you know, maybe, I mean, bigger kitchens, maybe 15 to 20 people, maybe. Where in Vegas, I mean, kitchens can be close to the hundreds. You know, I mean, you're doing full service restaurants, you know, and So there's a ton of people they work with, and the logistics behind it is just insane.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these restaurants are worth millions of dollars, you know, and so I think just trying to learn how to go from like being a line cook to being a manager, and understanding like how do you speak with people, how do you earn people's respect, because that was like the most hardest thing, I think. You know what I mean? It's like, especially when you're a line cook and then all of a sudden you get promoted to sous chef, and you know all your peers are looking at you, and I'm like, dude, I'm your boss now. You know? Like, and they like have a minute to like think about that. Like, well, no, man, I don't. Screw you.
Yeah. What do you mean? We were just getting beers last night.
Yeah. So it was kind of hard to kind of deal with that, you know. But you know, I learned just systems, you know, and like how do you run and execute a kitchen consistently and good, and you know, what are you paying attention to? What are you not paying attention to? You know, and so it really spurred my growth, I think, just in the sense of like how to manage a kitchen, right? Rather than just being like a number in the kitchen, coming in, setting up your station, and you know, working whatever you know you're doing that night. There's a whole other level of like what kitchens are, you know, especially in high volume places like that.
Because it's one thing to say, cool, Nick, like we know you know how to cook. Now create this engine that can replicate and can be consistent about how this happens. Right. And there's going to be so many personalities and so much drama and so many things. Good luck.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is, man. You know, and that was hard. That was definitely hard for me. You know, I feel like I get along with everybody. But then as soon as it's like you're crossing that line, man, you know, it's like, oh, you're on the dark side now. You know, it's like, bro, I'm not though. Like, you know, I'll tell you what to do, but it's like, don't take it personal. You know, so that was a little difficult, but
totally,
I got through it. You know?
Yeah, you're still alive.
And now I'm growing. Yeah, now I've grown to where I am now. You know, and I think it's really come to fruition. You know?
For sure. So is it when you were done in Vegas? Is that when you moved to Salt Lake and got started in Park City?
Yeah, so, you know, in like late 2017, you know, my wife and I, we were kind of like making decisions, you know, just about our lives. And she's got some family here in Utah. And like, you know, growing up, I would come up here frequently because I had family, you know, being born here. I still had my grandparents and had some aunt and uncles and stuff that lived up here. And so I knew Utah. Like I definitely loved the area, you know, I mean, I love the Wasatch, you know, I just love the mountains here and just the energy, the environment, you know, and, you know, Vegas, you know, it was a hell of a good time, man. Trust me. I had a really good time. That was an awesome place to be. And we had a great life, but we just kind of felt like, you know, what's next, you know? And, so then, you know, late 2017, we kind of made a decision, you know, let's move to Utah. Let's move to Salt Lake area, you know, and try something different. And we missed the seasons, things like that. So I ended up connecting with the chef up in Park City. Actually, it was the chef from Tupelo. So he and I had a conversation, and I came up like a month after we had a conversation. I was actually up here, funny enough, and it was for my niece's birthday, I believe, and I had just kind of Googled like, you know, chef jobs in Utah or Salt Lake or something. Found that he was hiring for a chef de cuisine, and ended up having, you know, this conversation that just ended up being, you know, that weekend I was in Utah.
Just like the stars aligned, and you're
super
like,
weird, man.
It's like, I have a job that's perfect for you, and I can talk to you right now if you'd like.
It was pretty wild. So then I came up like a month later. I did a tasting for him, and he was really impressed. And so, you know, gave me the job. And so I went back, told my wife, I was like, hey, you know, he's offered me the job. Like, do you want to move? And like, okay, we're going to do this. So we did it. And, yeah, so I worked in Park City, for that company for about 3 years. During the pandemic, like we ended up closing the Main Street location. The restaurant moved down to Heber, actually. So I was commuting from basically the Midvale area all the way to Heber for an entire year. And that was draining, man. Yeah. It was draining. It was a good 2 hours easily out of my day, you know, and then go work 10 or 12 hours. And so it was rough. But so after, you know, that 3 years, after that, you know, I got approached by the company I work for now. And they said, you know, hey, look, we're opening a restaurant in Salt Lake.
Yeah, because this is the same family that, I mean, they've did Handle up in Salt Lake.
Nope, Hearth and Hill.
Hearth and Hill, yes. Yep. Hearth and Hill up there, have catering as well. But then, I mean, Urban, I'm sure we'll get there. But like, I'm really curious of how. Yeah. Anyway, keep going. I'll jump in.
Yeah. So they reached out and said, hey, you know, we're opening a fine dining restaurant in Salt Lake, and we kind of know who you are and, what you do. We've eaten at the places that you've worked at. And if you're interested in talking, like, we'd love to chat, And I was like, wow. All right. So Salt Lake was really on my radar from the
You mean you don't want
beginning,
to you don't want to commute to
Oh my
Park City
God,
or
man.
Heber every day?
No, please. I was just kind of at that point, I was like so burnt, man.
Yeah.
And so then I was very intrigued. I was like obviously very humbled that they reached out to me, and I was on their radar. And when they started talking to me more about what was happening, I was just like, man, this is right up my alley. This is what I've been waiting for, essentially. And being in Salt Lake, that's one reason I wanted to move here. It was like I knew the growth in Salt Lake was going to happen, and it was just only a matter of time. And I could already see it happening. Every time my wife and I would come up here and visit with family. So I was like super, excited just about maybe being part of that growth, And so we ended up making it work, and they got me on very early in the process. So I was capable to, be part of like the actual build out of the kitchen and, where things, where certain things were. So it was like a learning process for me.
I mean, especially if you get to be able to be the person, be like, oh,
Yeah.
like we're still building everything out. Like I have opinions. I want it to be a certain way,
Exactly.
instead of walking into another kitchen being like,
Right.
don't love this, don't love that. Or, and really just being able to make it your own.
I was so appreciative of that. It was like, wow, like, these people care, like they want me to be part of that process. And, I found that really, really awesome. I mean, it was just inspiring to me. And so, got brought on real early in the process. So I ended up working at Hearth and Hill in Kimball Junction there, probably for, oh man, it was probably a year and a half, while the Post District was being built. And, Post District was in a very beginning stage of like, okay, this is a new development, in Salt Lake. And I think it sort of spurred like this extensive growth that you're seeing now.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, there's going to be these little neighborhood pockets, spinning throughout the whole city. And so when I saw like blueprint plans and things like that, and like the whole like, thing of what Post District is going to eventually become, I was like, damn, dude, that's sick.
Like in my restaurants right there.
Yeah. I was like, all right, this is game on, fellas, So, eventually, it opened. We opened in December of 2022, and here we are 2 years later, man. It's like,
Crazy.
wow, where did that go?
Yeah, and like I do love, like when I think about real estate projects in Salt Lake and development, I always look at Post District because I do love what they did. Because one of my favorite things about any city bigger than us is I love walkability. I love feeling like I can bump into people, whether it's just like giving someone a smile or sparking conversation. But that place is done so well with, I mean, obviously with Urban Hill being right there, the Traeger headquarters, Melancholy that just opened, Urban Sailor, like Level Crossing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I just love being able to look and be like, yes. If anyone's looking for inspiration, look here and then go
Yeah.
from there. We don't need any more stucco boxes. We don't need any more chain restaurants. Like,
Yeah.
perfect. But I want to talk to you about the concept of the restaurant, because
Sure.
I love hearing about all of these different restaurants that you've been able to see along the way. I mean, starting from very much like Southwestern food in Santa Fe to going up and having, Spanish tapas, and then going to steak, and then going to, Italian, and then, to Hearth and Hill, and then Urban Hill. I assume this is the first time that you've had full control over a menu and what you're going to put on the menu. How much control did you have over that? What were your thoughts after all of this background? Would you love a little insight into how you put it all together and still do?
Yeah, no, I think it's, it's really hard to be a chef in Vegas, because you're typically under somebody's shadow, right? A lot of the big names are celebrity chefs, or, and so you're a chef at that restaurant, but your creativity aspect is very, very minimal, if anything at all, right? So being allowed to create a menu, and then kind of discuss, what the operation looks like, was why I became a chef. I need to have that creativity, otherwise I'm going to be stagnant, and I'm just being like, yeah, just here another day, like doing my thing, like just managing people. Like, I don't want that, man. I want to create food. It's the whole reason I became a chef, is like, what's in my mind and how can I create certain dishes, So I think just over a period of time, the menu, was kind of a collaboration between my ownership and then, one of our previous chefs that we had in the company. And, we were kind of like just designing it as like, okay, how can we differentiate ourselves from a normal restaurant? I shouldn't say normal, but like, let's just say like a chain restaurant, or a chain steakhouse or something like that. We have a wood-fired grill. Do we want to focus everything on the wood-fired grill, or what are we trying to be, So the menu was kind of like a variance of just different ideas that we've all kind of processed, and 2 years in, now I think we've really nailed what we're doing. And what we're doing is like, we're just sort of, this outliner of like a fine dining restaurant that offers a large variety of cuisine, and that's Southwestern, that's French, that's Asian, that's Spanish, that's whatever. I mean, like there's a ton of stuff, like that we've kind of influenced our menu and based it around. And I think, that's what has kind of differentiated us is like, we're a big restaurant. We have a pretty big menu. We want people to come in and explore the menu. You know what I mean? I don't think we pride ourselves on like, having just like a tasting menu, right?
Yeah.
We want people to come in. Typically, I'd say, man, a good percentage of people come in there with another couple or a group of people, and we want people to like really taste everything. Like let's share. You know, and that's kind of become the dominant idea is like our appetizers are all shareable. It's not like individual portions. It's enough for 2, sometimes 3 people. But I think it's just been influenced based on my background, and like my chef de cuisine, his background. And, we definitely, I don't want to say I take total control over it, but I collaborate very well with both of my chefs. Sometimes it's even kitchen staff, like what are they interested in, and how can I keep them interested? One of my sous chefs and I linked up last year, and we put an appetizer on the menu, and it's done so well, and he's from the Philippines, so it's like I draw influence from the people I work with. I mean, it's a very multicultural type business, and so that's where I always draw my inspiration, is just trying to find, something that I'm interested in, and start researching it, do some testing, things like that, and understand it better, understand the historical aspects of it, and just go for it, and see how people react to it.
Totally. And from like the people management perspective, you don't hire sous chefs and line cooks and other chefs to just do what you hated about being in that job. Like, all right, show up, here's your station. Here's what needs to be done, and go do it. No creativity. But if they are, those hungry chefs or those hungry people that really do want to, make an impact to the kitchen, to the restaurant, to everybody else's experience. If they're like, hey, by the way, chef, like I've been messing with this at home and I really like the way that this comes together, and I think it'd be really fun if we could do this. It's like, it would be a travesty for the leader in that situation to be like, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for years. You think you can walk into here, which I'm sure you've run into personalities similar to that. But it's another thing to like, even if it is, let's say, a terrible idea, it's like, oh, let's think about this. Even if it becomes a coaching moment of like, so now we know why this may have not been a good idea, but now we know how to turn into a good idea. Like, now go refine. So I love that you have that perspective about it, because it could be easy for you just to be like king of the castle, on the castle. But at the end of the day, like that's not when the magic happens.
Nah, man, I definitely want my cooks to be interested, and especially if they're serious about it, right? If they're at home creating dishes or recipes, I want to listen, I want to understand, like, I feel like this business, especially being a chef, is like, this is a never ending learning experience, period. Like till the day I go to retirement, I hope I'm learning something, like it's never ending. And it's gotten, crazy to see social media blow up about food, and like how much actually we can still pull from that. Even though I've been in this game for a long time, like, dude, I don't know shit. You know what I mean? Like literally, there's so much to learn out there. And like, getting on social media and going on Instagram or whatever it is, pulling from people's ideas and like, you're like, dang, dude, like, how did you do that? Like, that was awesome. How'd you even think of that? So I just feel like, when you hear young cooks talking about food, it's like, I always kind of put the pressure on them too. It's like, all right, well, that's a great idea, but walk me through every step. Right. And is this something realistic that you could do in a restaurant setting? So I don't automatically just say, yeah, that's great. It's like, you need to show me why this is going to work, and tell me why you think it's going to work. So there's a little bit more detail involved.
Totally. And I love that, because it's, again, like a good idea doesn't mean it's going to work. And even if it's like a new sous chef and they're trying to figure something out, like, oh yeah, like, can we do this in this kitchen with these other things going on and execute well? And they're like, well, actually, I don't think so. Because if we do this and this and that timing, like, all right, now we're thinking the right way.
Exactly.
So either we got to solve for that, or we have to like somehow make that problem go away. And that's even assuming that you do want to do it. Because you can look at it all, be like, great idea, good plate, but like, it just isn't going to work for what we need.
You could write menus all day, man. You know, like, you could write 1,000 different things, you know, and say, oh, that's going to be a menu item. But then you start looking at the details of like how it's executed. And then you're like, that's stupid. Like, you're just going to screw everybody else. You know, it's not going to work.
And like, there was someone I was talking to the other day, because I have this philosophy on like problem solving that is like, there's levels to it. It's like the first level is, oh, I identified a problem. Like, wow, everybody can identify a problem. And if you think you're a genius for identifying problems around the world in your life, like, congratulations, you made it to level 1. And then level 2 is being solution oriented and saying like, oh, here's a problem, here's how we can solve it.
Yeah.
And then the third level is saying, here's a problem, here's how we solve it, I can do it. And then fourth is being able to do it in a repeatable way to have that outcome happen time after time. And so in the context of a kitchen, it's like, hey, we need to have this dish that works with what we're doing, works with what the resources we have at hand, that we can consistently give this experience. Because the biggest gripe I hear from people about the food scene in Salt Lake is consistency.
Yeah.
Where someone will go to a restaurant and be like, oh my gosh, this dish was amazing, I love this, but then go 2 weeks later and like, this isn't it. Like, what happened? This isn't what I had the last time.
Right.
And so I feel like that's kind of like, again, like this fourth level of things that if I'm a new restaurateur, like a chef, we're trying to like build a menu, you might not understand that side of things until you're like, oh wait, we do have consistency issues. How do we fix this?
Man, that is the biggest part of, I think, what I try to do every single day is making sure things are consistent, right? Because if you can't be consistent, man, people aren't going to go back, you know, and it's unfortunate that, like, you know, you can hit on all cylinders multiple times, and then there's that one time that you don't, and you hear it. Like, it's, people put it out there, man. Yeah. Google reviews, whatever it is, like, you know, it pisses me off, honestly, man.
Totally.
You know, and it's like, but I take it seriously though. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, even the most minuscule, you know, amount of feedback, you know, might be like, okay, maybe we need to think about this. You know, what are we doing right, you know, about this dish, or what are we doing wrong, you know, and how do we fix it, you know? So sometimes you have to just kind of put it by the wayside, man. Just be like, all right, you know, we got a shitty review, or somebody wasn't happy about that. Because you're not going to please everyone. No. You know what I mean? That's just the reality. And I think personally, though, like, I strive daily to try to make sure that, you know, we're a very consistent restaurant. And we've got a ton of regulars, man. I mean, people are in there sometimes twice a week, you know, and it's like, whoa.
That's what it, like,
dope.
And that's what it, I mean, that's, again, like, consistency is in a restaurant essentially synonymous with trust, right? Like, I want to be able to come in, trust the experience, trust the food, trust that it's going to happen the same way. And like, there's been a lot of restaurants recently that have gone out of business. And like, my biggest pet peeve with people is I'll be like, oh, this place went out of business. And someone's like, oh my gosh, I love that place. What do you mean? I'm like, when's the last time you were there? They're like, well, it was like 3 years ago. I'm like, do you really like it?
A lot can change. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
And so I love, like, and that's the biggest, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, but like, the biggest compliment anybody can give, be like, hey, I'm here twice a week. I'm here once a month. It's like our date night, and you know that we always come here, and you know I'm always going to get this. And like, and being like,
it feels good, man. It trust me, it feels really good when you see people come in there that you've seen in there 2 or 3 times that same week. You know, you're like, all right, well, these people really love it. You know, and it's like, okay, guys, and you kind of, you start recognizing that, you know, and you see, you know, familiar faces, and you kind of like have to, you know, tell your cooks like, hey, you know, these people have been here multiple times this week. And then, you know, we keep a record of that. And sometimes, I mean, man, we got a program where, you know, you get returns. You know, it's like a, you know, it's one of those like
loyalty rewards.
Yeah, loyalty. Thank you. And that has really, really helped us a lot, you know, and people get rewarded for coming back to us, you know, and you'll see like people that have 20, 30, 45 visits, 50 visits, and you're like, wow, that's freaking awesome.
You're like, I don't even eat my cooking that much.
Yeah, I'm like, damn. I'm like, so you've probably eaten everything on the menu, you know? So it's so dope to see that, though. You know, it makes you feel like, okay, we're doing something right here. But the consistency part of that is extremely hard. It's extremely hard, man. You know, because you're just, it's a constant battle of putting the trust, you know, in your cooks and in your sous chefs and everyone around you. And that includes front of house, back of house, from top to bottom. We can't do what we do every day without everybody involved in it. Service is a big thing for us. We really pride ourselves on having great service, and we talk about that every single day. Like, why are we doing what we're doing, and people coming back because you're doing something right. So it's the hardest thing for me. I sometimes lose a lot of sleep over it. I'll be honest.
I mean, it means you care, which is a beautiful thing. And I mean, kitchens are teams and teamwork, and everyone has to work together. Yeah. And if there's an issue somewhere or a blind spot, then everybody fixes it together, right, to the extent that they can, and go from there. But so I love that you've gotten to this point now where, I mean, it's been a little over 2 years since doors opened, and you're like, all right, we're dialed now. Mm-hmm. I mean, now that you've gotten comfortable in the kitchen, comfortable in the menu, comfortable in like a lot of the processes, I mean, what do you see from here as far as Urban Hill and where it's going to go?
Yeah, I don't know. I really, really want us just to continue what we're doing and do it better, and I think there's always room for improvement. You know what I mean? There's never a time where I feel like, okay, we're good. But
I'd be worried if there was.
Yeah, totally. And I think, the same mentality it starts from our ownership, right? I mean, they're very in tune to what they want, as far as being, a restaurant group and really putting an impact on the dining scene in Salt Lake and in Park City. We're going to open 2 more restaurants, probably in March, in Sugar House. And so we're growing, and it's like no turning back. It's like, okay, guys, we're in it for the long run. How do we become the best place that we can possibly be and recognized? And, I think Urban Hill is going to become a staple of Salt Lake City. And I think for a long period of time, but, we really just care. You know what I mean? From top to bottom, everybody cares about what they're doing there. And, it just speaks volumes to the overall success in a short amount of time. A lot of restaurants, the amount of restaurants that can close within a year or two is insane. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that can't do it. They can't make it, Our mentality is like, we're going to make it. You know what I mean? We're going to strive and shoot for the stars every single day. And the attitude is basically that, and we want to be the best of the best. We want to be recognized by the community. The community has just been amazing to us. We've really gained a good following of people, and I think it was something that Salt Lake kind of needed. Salt Lake needed a place like that. It wasn't just like your chain, restaurant or steakhouse. And, I think there's a ton of like local chef owned restaurants that are doing dope shit. And I love that. And I want to be part of that, and I think, we've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time, but, hey man, the sky's the limit. We got to keep going.
Totally. And I love that. I mean, it's been Earthen Hill, Urban Hill, and now with, 2 more in the horizon in Sugar House, which being like, hey, people like it, people want it. Like, then we're going to keep doing it because again, like people have an appetite for it. People want this sort of experience in a way that they never have in Salt Lake. Growing up, in a family of 5, like anytime a meal of eating out was like, it's a transaction. We need to eat, we need to get out, like, and get it going. Whereas now, people don't have as many kids. People have a little bit more money because they don't have kids. And then people are starting to appreciate, like, for lack of a better term, like the finer things. And so it's been fun to see people appreciate that and really understand food better. And like, because like one of my biggest pet peeves, if I go to a restaurant with someone or they're telling me about going to restaurants, like, oh, well, how was it? Like, oh, it was good.
What else?
Like, that's it? That just Julius Caesar, thumbs up, thumbs down. That's it. Like, what did you have? What did you like about it?
Tell me more.
Why did you order this? Did you have it? Like, and so it's fun sometimes. Like, I'll coach people a little bit because if they're like, oh, it was really good. I'm like, okay, like.
But experience is, you said the exact right word. It's experience, right? We want to provide that experience, from the time that you walk in that door to the time you leave. You can say, man, that was a great experience. Not like, hey, that was a good dinner. Like, that was a great experience. Like, everything about that was on point, know? And I think that's what it's become with people dining out, especially at nicer restaurants. Is like, it's not just to go have a bite to eat, and shoot the shit with your friend. Like, it's a place you're going to actually enjoy being there and love the environment and everything about it, and I think that's a big thing that we've nailed pretty well, and we continue to just try to put pressure on our staff to do that every day, so.
And I love it too, because I like what you were talking about earlier about like the people who come in. It's like, oh, it's usually a couple and another couple like trying to have a good night. And my cousin's a chef, lives down up in Willamette Valley.
Nice.
Has been chef. I mean, Seattle, Portland, LA his entire life, honestly. But it wasn't until I was living in Seattle and I would go down there a lot and be like, let's go having a night out. And I never really understood that. I mean, growing up, like very LDS, like food is a luxury. It's not an experience. Like it's not something that we prioritize. Yeah. And most meals were cooked at home. To him being like, okay, we're going to go get drinks and appetizers here. Then we're going to go put our name in for another place. We're going to get another drink, maybe appetizer somewhere else. And we're going to go do this. If we're feeling it, maybe we'll get a port or a sherry at the restaurant or maybe go get a dessert after. And if we're feeling something like, and then go from there. And I was like, I get it now. Like, I always try to like coach these friends where it's like, hey, if we're going to dinner, it's not a transaction. Right. We're not ordering food to eat, to leave. Like it's not rushed. Yeah. And because like I love talking to people, shocker. And so like you put me at a table with good food, good wine, good people. Like I'm not trying to get out of there. Like if I'm there for like 2.5 hours and like it's a 4-figure deal, like meal, I'm like, we did it. Like we had a great experience. And so it's fun to see people again like go from this mentality of checking a box of, oh, I do need to eat, or I haven't seen you in a while, to being like, no, like sit down, stay a while, let's chat, like let's have a couple drinks and like really be here and be ourselves and go from there. And I love that. I mean, Urban Hill is that experience, and like how I've experienced with people, it's like, yeah, let's go have a little night out.
It's true though, man. Like I feel like our restaurant, you had mentioned earlier about, you feel like you're not in Salt Lake City. And I think that was really like the whole, design aspect essentially is like, this is going to be different. You're going to walk in and you're like, dude, where are we? You know? But when you also walk in there, it's very homey in a sense, right?
Yes.
It's really open,
it's like warm and welcoming.
Exactly. Like most of the seating is like couches or like nice chairs.
Which I like.
It's not your typical like just square tables just lined up. Like it's booths and couches, and it's just a more comfortable environment. You feel like you're almost feeling like it's somebody's dining room table instead of like a restaurant. And then with our open kitchen, people get stoked about that, because then they can actually see the action, and people will walk by and like they'll just stop right by the pass and they'll just stare, But it's cool because then you can like talk to the people too and say thank you and hello, and sometimes I'll go and I'll talk to some of the tables around the pass and just ask them what their experience is about, and take the feedback.
Totally. No, I love that. It's like it makes that experience even better when they're like, what you doing? What are those?
Right,
and you're like, oh, this is for this. Did you order that? Yep, this is how this was done.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess outside of like Urban Hill, if you're going out for a night on the town or you're looking for a date night with wifey, what kind of places do you like to go to?
I just think there's such a huge culture drive right now that there's a ton of places that I want to go, and there's a ton of like just entrepreneurial restaurateurs that are opening places, and I think that list just keeps growing and growing, but man, I love Manoli's. Mateo is awesome. There's I don't know. There's just so many. I know
it's overwhelming.
Like I could start thinking about it I love naming it off.
Like you were talking about, is like there's these new people to the scene. Like Mateo's done a great job, and it's cool to see him move into that new space. Manoli, I'm actually scheduling with him.
Oh, sick!
Like,
all right.
I love Manoli's, and then we have Puree that just opened.
And
so there's so many cool things. Like I've yet to see something open or hear of something where I'm like, trash, or like pass, like I don't need this. And so it's nice to be like, oh yes, more of this, yes, keep going down this rabbit hole. It's not like, hey, Sugar House, did you want a new Cheesecake Factory? It's like no.
The whole 9th area is so sick too, like just the growth over there. Even Post District, eventually there's going to be a lot more spots in that area, I know for a fact. One of the big investors comes into our restaurant all the time, and he's trying to attract people, and like you said earlier, like, pulling people from out of state, like, hey, Salt Lake could be a nice hub for you guys, if you're trying to expand out of state, so, but there's just so many, like, there's a ton of talent in this city, man. Like, I think way more than I ever could have assumed. And I think, the things that are opening up, are what builds a great city. Yep. There's cool neighborhood bars. There's dope ass restaurants, there's small chef owned restaurants that are killer, and I love to see that, and I love to be part of that, and I think it just really I think over the next probably 5 to 10 years, dude, Salt Lake will be a completely different place, man.
Oh yeah.
Completely different.
And it's like one thing to go from like when you decided to move here being like, I think this is going to be good for like obviously being close to family and like in a place close to that's great. But you're like, I think this is also going to be really good for my career because I think this is going to happen. To now fast forward to now where, I mean, you've had a lot of opportunities present themselves to you where you were working towards, and then now it's like easy to look at and be like, well, you know what I thought was happening? It's happening.
Right.
And I get to have, a seat at the table to be and so impactful on it all. Like I can't imagine what an amazing experience that is going from, I don't know, let me go check out this restaurant in Santa Fe to like, all right, cool, 2 new restaurants. Let's go think about some like, and just like being able to execute on so many fun things.
It's so wild, man. Like I look back at that, you know, and like just seeing where I started in my career. And then, you know, I went from like that to like big Las Vegas and like working in massive hotels with these gorgeous restaurants. And then, you know, small Park City kitchen restaurant, you know, and then now to like another high-end restaurant, you know, and, just seeing the involvement of all that. I mean, yeah, sometimes I have to kind of sit back and think about it. But, you know, it's like, I also think about, dang, you got a long ways to go, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's so much more
Credit
to be
where
had.
credit's due, but still
I still got a long ways to go, man.
Well, but you have the right mentality about it. You're like, I don't know anything. Like, I'm still learning. I'm still scrolling on social media and getting ideas. Like, I always worry when people are like, I know a lot about this. I'm like, ooh, that can be really dangerous for most people.
Yeah, totally. I love learning more about cooking, you know. I mean, dude, there's so much to learn about cooking. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I've been in this a long time, you know, but dude, like again, man, I don't know shit, man. There is a ton more to learn.
Oh,
there's a ton more. I mean, like I look at some of these people, you know, locally even, and I'm like, man, I want to learn how to do that. You know, I don't know that. Yeah. So it's fun.
So many different ways you can go.
Yeah.
And so many different cuisines and types and skills and.
But it's inspiring to like, I also want Urban Hill to like really grow, you know, in its own right. You know, like what direction our menu's going. You know, locally, I really pride myself on using a ton of farmers whenever possible.
Yeah.
As soon as the summertime hits, you know, when the farms are like really popping, man, I love that time. I love it. You know, like I'll get deliveries, you know, I got, you know, farmers even in Park City that come down here and drop food for us. And that was a big thing for me, man, was, you know, you don't see that in Las Vegas, you know. You're working in a hotel, man. You don't know where the food's coming from.
It just shows up in the fridge and
exactly. You know, you order what you need and it's like, all right, cool. You know, this is pretty cool. But like working hand in hand with farmers has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, you know, and learning how they, like their daily routine, you know, and like when the vegetables come into our restaurant, dude, sometimes I just sit there and I look at them. I'm like, holy shit, this is dope. Yeah. This is really sick.
Because there's no replacement for good ingredients. Like you can't go to Walmart and get great value zucchini and think you're gonna just have like the best dish.
Totally.
And
it makes a difference, man.
Oh,
I mean,
night and day.
It's crazy. Like, you know, when I can tell my customers, like, hey, you know, the carrots that you're eating today were grown, you know, 20 miles in Park City, you know, from here. Their eyes just like open up. They're like, wow, are you kidding me? And I'm like, yeah, this is like legit local farm to table, you know? Yeah. I mean, that phrase farm to table is, you know, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Everything comes from a farm, man.
Yeah. And it ended up on your table.
Exactly. So,
but to be like, this is where it came from. I literally shook his hand as he dropped it off yesterday.
Yeah. And you build those relationships with the farmers, you know, which I think is so cool. And, you know, they can rely on you, especially because that's their livelihood, man. You know, like there's certain times of year where like those people are trying to make a living, you know, doing what they do. And man, being a farmer is a very difficult thing. You know, it's extremely hard. I thought being a chef was hard. I'm like, dude, I can't be getting up at like 5 a.m. and go till a field, you know? I mean, that's some shit I don't want to do, you know? And so when they do it, you know, and you see that product come out of it, you're like, dude, this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. And then it just like focuses around the menu too, you know? Like you really get into like, how do you design a menu item that's more based on just the vegetables rather than like the protein? Yeah. Right.
They're like, we got this incoming, Nick. What do you think? You're like, ooh, I got an idea.
And it's more sustainable.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, like, especially nowadays, like our food system, man, is, you know, it's in trouble.
Yeah.
It's in trouble. and we got a lot of work to do.
Exactly. And the more that we can be like, I know where this was grown, I know who grew it, I know that there wasn't anything else going on, and it's going to make a great deal.
Yeah. I think it just makes a better community, also, because then you can kind of rely on that, of like the camaraderie of farmers and chefs and, farmers markets, where people can actually go and see these products that are being grown right here in our valley or in the mountains. I would have never thought that in Park City there'd be, the amount of farmers there are up in that area, but, high altitude farming is real, man. Yeah. And it is some of the best produce I've ever seen in my whole entire life, man. It's pretty badass.
Hey, as long as they keep making it and you make it into great things, I'm on board.
All right. One talking about community, actually, one that stands out to me, her name is Dana Williamson, and she runs, it's called Wasteless Solutions, and it's basically a nonprofit organization where they rescue food. The food system is totally jacked right now, right? And a ton of food gets wasted. She runs a program where she rescues food from, grocery stores or just markets or whatever, leftover stuff that like eventually was going to just go to a landfill, right? Her company basically takes that food and repurposes it, either for like, families or events or things like that. But it's a total nonprofit, and she's doing amazing things, man. Like I look at her and like, chefs, we're doing what we do, but like she's a true hero, man. She's trying to really help the community. Yeah. And our food waste is mind-boggling about how bad it is, right? I mean, the amount of food, I feel bad throwing away something at home, I'm like, I don't know. It's just like those things go into the landfills, and create, toxic gases and things like that. We compost at Urban Hill. We compost every single thing. Cool. And so it's one thing that we really strive is like try to do our part at the restaurant, is making sure like we're as sustainable as possible. From our cups to whatever it is, like we try very, very hard to do that. And especially because, in the food restaurant industry, it's one of those things where you sort of have to look into like what you're using, where is it coming from, what's the packaging like, how can we repurpose that or whatever. But her company, Wasteless Solutions, I think is doing amazing things and gaining exponential growth is trying to help our community, prevent throwing all that food away and helping underprivileged people.
No, love it. I think I've seen her car driving around.
Yeah, probably.
Actually, I think it's been parked out of
here. Like a little van, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think I've seen it parked out of here a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like, like I'll look and be like, interesting.
Yeah, people cruise around the city, and I mean, like they'll go to events, or I don't know. I'm not really sure, right, what exactly they're grabbing from, but
figure it out.
But they definitely try to grab whatever food might go into a landfill and utilize that somehow. She does a every year they do like a Wasteless Solutions program where they'll invite local chefs and actually do an event that's designed around, like they'll give you a list of products and say, hey, we want you to join the event. I'm going to give you all these food products that we have on hand, and you create a dish out of it, right? Yeah. So I've done that 2 years in a row. It was so much fun, man. Yeah. Like just going down a list and being like, oh, I'll make that, and then you end up creating something. And you're like, that was not what I wanted to create, but it turned out pretty sick.
Like
it's delicious.
No.
But it was like repurposing all that food, and instead of it just going into a trash can, like I just fed 500 people. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like interesting to see the issues of food that we have in the country and the world is. It's not about quantity. It's about getting everything to the right people. Mm-hmm. And so anybody who's taking it upon themselves to be like, oh, well, if you're throwing away here, they actually need this for this, and like bring people together and wasting less things, especially like, improving food scarcity.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, totally.
And then lastly, if people want to find out more info about you or about Urban Hill and stay in the loop, what's the best place to find information?
Yeah, you can go to our website, Urban-Hill, I believe it's urban-hill.com. Okay. Just look up Google it and pretty much gives you the whole story. Like our website's really efficient and you can learn a lot about it. Personally, you can find me on Instagram. It's just Chef Nick .Zocco, and you can just look me up on Instagram if you want and kind of see what we're doing. I try to keep that social thing moving a little bit. I'm not the best at it, but. Yeah, that's kind of
you got other priorities. You got other things.
Yeah, dude, being on social media it's hard, man.
It's a grind.
It's almost like a second job. You got to really dig into like what you're doing.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot recently. If anybody ever
I'm
thinks
sure.
being active on social media or like being like a quote content creator is easy, I'm like, just okay, go post every day for 60 days and let's
Yeah,
chat.
right. I always wonder about like, okay, what's the best time to post something, and or is that photo worthy enough, or whatever it is. I don't know, but I don't take it too seriously, honestly, man.
Throw it out there, let the algorithm deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's always changing, so it's like I don't even know what to think.
Yeah, it's weird to like pay attention to my life year over year has been night and day different in a good way, but it's just so funny to look at. Well, Nick, thank you so much. I'm so
Yeah,
excited for the future to come. Like everybody go check out Urban Hill. If he's there, go say hi.
Yes, please.
The open kitchen.
Yeah. I love when people say hi, man. People walk in, they can, just I'm wearing my chef jacket, but I'm easy to talk to, man. Just say what's up, I always like that, I think it's something I appreciate as part of my job, so.
Totally. Well, Nick, thank you so much. Excited for the future to come. Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
And yeah,
I'll
see you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Salt Lake City Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And we'll catch you next week. We'll see you there.